We are doing exercise 7D, and in this video I'm going to be answering question 2e, which says find a sequence of transformations that takes the graph of y equals 2 the square root of 4 minus x plus 3 to the graph of y equals negative the square root of x plus 6. Alright, so let's take a step back and figure out what this question is asking of me. So I know that I'm starting with a point x, y. I then am applying some transformations to it and arriving at a new point. Now, I don't yet know what these transformations are. The question is asking me to find out what they are. It's asking me to find the sequence of transformations. So until I find out what they are, I'm just going to say they're x dash and y dash. So I start with a point, I apply my transformation, and I arrive at a new point, which I'm calling x dash and y dash. And to figure out what my sequence of transformations are going to be, I'm going to figure out what my x dash and y dash are. So the aim of the game is to figure out what is my x dash and what is my y dash. Now, it's important that you realize in what direction we're moving. The question has told us that we're starting with this graph. Then we're applying some transformations and arriving at this graph. So that means over here, I'm going to say I'm starting with y equals 2 the square root of 4 minus x plus 3. This is the graph I'm starting with, which means that the point xy is going to lie on this graph. I then am applying some transformations to this graph and arriving at y equals negative the square root of x plus 6. Y equals negative the square root of x plus 6. So this is my transformed graph. And if it's my transformed graph, then my transformed point is going to lie on it. So I'm going to put in that point. I'm going to put x dash, y dash into the graph. And I'm going to call this my first step. So your first step when doing these problems is writing down x dash, y dash into the newly transformed graph. Let me now move on to my next step, which is all about rearranging. Now, how am I going to go about this rearranging? Well, we know that this 3 here and this 2 here are going to impact my y value. This is of course going to cause a translation of 3 units in my positive y, and this is going to cause a dilation of 2 from my x-axis, both of them changing my y value. And the way I like to think about it when we're doing this rearranging is I'm taking everything that's affecting my y value and moving it over to my left-hand side. So let me do that. I'm going to minus 3, then divide by 2. So I'm going to minus 3 and then divide by 2. And so now on this side, I have just this. So on my left-hand side, I have everything affecting my y value. And here, everything underneath my square root is affecting my x value. Now, we're going to do the same thing on the other side now. So again, this 6, this plus 6, is affecting my y value. So too is this negative. So I'm going to move both of them over to my left-hand side. So that means I'm going to minus 6 and then divide by negative 1. And if I divide by negative 1, these signs are just going to change. And then I'm going to be left with x dash on this side. So again, just to repeat myself, everything on my left-hand side is going to be affecting my y value, and everything on my right-hand side underneath my square root here is going to be affecting my x value. Perfect. Hopefully that all made sense. Let's now move on to the third step. The third step. In my third step, what I'm going to say is let this right here, let this equal this. Also, let this equal this. So let me write that out. I'm saying let y minus 3 over 2 equal minus y dash plus 6. I'm also saying let 4 minus x equal x dash. Now remember, let's scroll up for a second. Remember that the aim of the game is to figure out what my x dash and y dash is. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And as you can see here, I figured out what my x dash is. My x dash is 4 minus x. My x dash is 4 minus x. I haven't yet figured out what my y dash is. To do that, I'm going to have to rearrange and do so that I have y dash as my subject. So this is going to be my fourth step. My fourth step is going to do some rearranging. So I don't have to do any rearranging here. It's already in the form that I like. But I'm going to have to do some rearranging here. The easiest way to do this, I think, is, there's many different ways. I'm going to times this side by 2. So I'm going to get y minus 3 equals negative 2y dash plus 12. Then I'm going to minus 12 from both sides. So I'm going to get y minus 15 equals negative 2y dash. And then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. So I'm going to get y minus 15 over negative 2 equals y dash. Now we don't like it when there's negatives down the bottom. So I'm actually going to move it up the top. And if I move it up the top, this is going to become a negative and this is going to become a positive. Perfect. So now I have what my y dash equals. So let me come up here for a second and let me grab this and bring it down. So as I said at the beginning, the aim of the game is to figure out what my x dash and my y dash is, and we've done that. So now the last thing I have to do is say, all right, I'm starting at the point x, y. I then am applying some transformations, and I'm arriving at x dash and y dash. My x dash is going to be 4 minus x, and my y dash is going to be negative y plus 15 over 2. Now, I imagine that many of you got to this solution, then you went and looked at the back of the book, and the back of the book told you you were wrong. And it's only because they want you to represent this differently. This is correct, but there's a nicer way you could write it. But this is correct. So I'm going to say x, y is turning into, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say negative x plus 4. So notice I still have negative x. And, whoops, sorry, this is going to have to be negative 4. Sorry, my bad. So it's going to be negative x, and that negative will be plus 4. So it's the same thing, just different order. And then over here, we normally like our negative to be our second term. So it's going to be 15 minus y over 2. So really be careful. You'd hate to get the right answer here and then mess up this step right here. But hopefully that tells you why the back of the book has something a bit different to the first thing that I found. But hopefully this was helpful in answering question 2E from exercise 7D.